Welcome to the ABA program Demystifying Clerkships State and Appellate Courts, sponsored by the ABA Law Student Division, the ABA Solo Small Firm and General Practitioners Division's Judiciary Committee. My name is Josine Bond, and I will be serving as your moderator today. I serve as the Vice Chair of Student Bar Associations for the Law Student Division. Joining me on today's program is Judge Aphrodite Konduros, Court of Appeals, Columbia, South Carolina, Judge Lora J. Livingston of the 261st District Court, Travis County, Austin, Texas, and Judge J. Michelle Childs, the U.S. District Court, District of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. All of our guests today will be able to introduce themselves to you in a minute, but first I'd like to give you a rundown of what we'll be discussing throughout this program. There will be 6 major topics today: the clerkship application process, how to stand out in application stacks, what to avoid and what pitfalls to avoid during your application and interview process, how to prepare for your clerkship, the qualities of successful clerks that these judges have seen, and other clerkship and internship opportunities. Before we start the program with introductions, I would like to give you some housekeeping information. This program is being recorded and will be made available at www.abaforlawstudents.com once the program is complete. Second, as a reminder, the audience has joined this webinar in listen-only mode. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's faculty by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time throughout the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the 2 Q&A sessions that we have scheduled, one in the middle and one towards the end of the webinar today. We're going to start off the webinar today by hearing from Judge Livingston.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for your interest in this topic and also for joining us on the webinar. And thanks to our organizers, Judge Trials and my co-presenter, Judge Konduros, and of course to Jennifer, who is, or Josephine, who is moderating the panel, and all the folks behind the scenes at the ABA. I live in Austin, Texas, where I am a general jurisdiction trial court judge. That means that in my state I preside over the highest level of trial courts that there exist in my state. I started by graduating from UCLA. I'm a UCLA undergrad and a UCLA law grad. I've been in Austin now for a very long time. I started at legal aid, and then I went into private practice, and I've been on the bench now for over 20 years. I do just about everything besides criminal law. Don't have any interest in handling criminal cases, and so I hear all kinds of civil cases and all kinds of family cases. I like to say that I do everything from asbestos to zoning, and that's generally what I do in my court. Happy to be a participant.
Judge Konduros.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be with you today. Hello from Greenville, South Carolina, where I am currently sitting. I am a judge on the South Carolina Court of Appeals, which is a state court appellate court. My mother called it the JV Supreme Court. We have 5 on our Supreme Court, which is the court right above us, and there's 9 for the state of South Carolina on my court. I have served as a judge since 2002. I hate to admit I've been a lawyer for 32 years, but that's true. And I would hope and to say now, please consider joining the ABA when you're able. If you are now as a student member, that's great, but there's so many benefits from it, and it helps us all keep in touch with each other and the issues. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Judge Konduros. Judge Childs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased that you are joining us for this call because we really want to present you some wonderful information for your ability to clerk. I am in Columbia, South Carolina. Currently, I'm viewing this from Charleston, South Carolina at a federal judges seminar. I'm a federal trial district court judge, and I reside in Columbia, South Carolina, but also hold court in Greenville as well as Aiken, South Carolina. Prior to being on the federal bench, I served as a state trial judge. Before that, a workers' compensation commissioner. Before that, I ran our state's division of labor. And then before that, I was a partner in a law firm doing primarily labor and employment and general litigation. Again, welcome.
Thank you, Judge Childs. We are now going to start the substantive part of the program. Once our slide is advanced, there we go. Great. We're going to talk a little bit about the application process and what these judges are sort of looking for and how to stand out. So Judge Konduros, if you could start us off.
Thank you. I have a couple of things that I'd like to say right up front, which is I'm always surprised at the number of applicants we get, considering they have no idea that we have an opening or don't have an opening. I think most of you rely on your placement office at your law school, which is a wonderful idea. But I think Judge Childs has got me beat with the volume she gets. But I usually get close to 80 or 100 resumes a year in from wonderful students, and so many of you have so many experiences outside of law school. And I wanted to tell you a couple of pet peeves and a couple of things I like in your application itself. If you send me a resume with attached documentation, frankly, I do better if you mail it to me than if you email it to me. The state system doesn't have the wonderful application process that the federal system has, and frankly, we keep just a wonderful stack of terrific resumes. It also allows me, if we are not having opening or someone looks particularly terrific and we don't have an opening, I will actually share it with my fellow judges or our chief staff attorney, and it's easier just to walk down and hand it to them because so many of you have so many wonderful attachments. One of my pet peeves is a lot of you have letters of recommendation from professors and other lawyers and friends, and they don't come at the same time your application comes, which is difficult because I really feel that hard work goes to waste as we try to match up which professor sent it in or which friend sent it in to whether we still have your resume or not. If you would try to send all that together, it's completely helpful. I do like when you give me a full resume. A lot of times if someone has a college grade or a law grade that they're not particularly happy with, they just omit the GPA, but you know, we can read and we know why you didn't put it down. You may be an absolutely fabulous 2-9 student and have so many qualities we're looking for. Don't be afraid to just put it down, and don't make us call you to ask. We're just going to assume you're not happy with it when you don't put something down. Some people put down a terrific undergrad GPA and don't put a law school grade or the other way. Don't do that. I will tell you, I got an editor-in-chief of a law review resume in yesterday after we had a trial run of this webinar, and there were 3 typos in the cover letter and 4 typos in the resume itself. I found that a little hard to believe, but there it was. As far as the application process, watch what you're sending in. It's important, certainly for any court, but for an appellate court where all our work product is written, we don't need typos in your actual application process. It's not going to go well.
Thanks so much, Judge Konduros. Great tips there, making sure that your resume and cover letter as well as your letters of recommendation come together and making sure that there aren't any typos. I know that's a killer for most judges. Judge Livingston, do you have anything to add?
Well, I want to echo and perhaps add a few things. I'll start at the last point about the typos. I had in my notes, prepared notes, in bold type, proofread. And I think that you should not only proofread your own work, but you should probably have a friend proofread it for you. Whenever you're looking for a position of any kind, it's going to be the most important thing you're working on at that moment. And so if it's that important to you and you want to make a good impression, and this is your only opportunity to do that, then you really ought to take it seriously and not only proofread your own work, but you should ask a friend to proofread it for you as well. I know that oftentimes, even in my own decision letters, when I'm writing something, I'm thinking about it as I'm typing. I no longer, you know, in the old days, I used to write something out, and then I would type it or give it to a secretary to type, and then I would just sign it. Well, now I use my computer and I type as I'm thinking, and that can be problematic, even though sometimes it's faster. Sometimes I think it, but I don't actually type it on the page, but I'm thinking about it, and so I make the assumption that my thought magically appears when in fact it hasn't. This is so important that you really ought to take the time to proof it again, ask a friend to proof it, make sure you're satisfied with it, let it sit for a minute, come back to it when you're not in the weeds of it, and upon reflection, read it again to make sure that it actually says what you want it to say and that you've said it in the best possible way that you can think of to say it. So I can't emphasize that enough. We get a ton of paper. We get a ton of correspondence, and one of the ways we distinguish among them and we discriminate against them, frankly, is if we can easily eliminate one that is not carefully proofread. I agree also that you should not send the court an email. Frankly, it seems a little lazy. I realize that that is kind of the norm of communication. Once we have established a relationship, you can send me an email. You know, if I give you permission to call me by my first name, you can do that. It's a kind of level of familiarity that you earn. You don't start off the bat with that level of familiarity. So don't ever call me by my first name unless I invite you to do it. Don't ever send me something by email then when we haven't met already or been introduced by somebody already, because it sort of suggests a kind of familiarity that makes judges uncomfortable. And so take the time to put a stamp on it and snail mail it to us. Now, if the court invites email applications, obviously you can email it, but I think you ought to find that out in advance. I will tell you that my staff is open and friendly and nice and transparent, and they will tell you anything you want to know. So if you want to call ahead and say, hey, should I send an email? Would that be okay? And you get permission, no problem. If you call ahead and they say, oh, please don't send an email, that's the kiss of death, now you know ahead of time. So don't hesitate to make a phone call ahead of time to the court and find out what the judge wants, what the judge likes, what the judge hates. You know, I think that would be a helpful way to start even at the application process, especially at the application process. We get a lot of applications, and we get them at all times of the year, not just in the summertime. And sometimes we have openings and sometimes we don't. So again, I think it would be to your best interest to call ahead and find out if there's an opening before you take the trouble of sending us all this information. Just call the court and talk to the staff and say, hey, I'm interested in a summer position, or I'm interested in working, you know, part-time during the school year. And, you know, are there any available positions? You know, I'm willing to do it, you know, as a volunteer. I need to get paid. Whatever information you can give them, they'll be honest with you, and they'll just tell you, yeah, now's not a good time, or hey, send it to me now and I'll hold it for you and put it at the top of the list when the judge is open to reviewing applications. I would also point out that it would be helpful, even as early as the application process, to be thinking ahead to your interview. So put things on your resume and put things in your application that you're going to want to talk about in your interview. You know, it's kind of like we tell baby lawyers about the trial process. You know, tell the judge an opening statement, put on some evidence, and then tell the judge again in closing argument. Well, this works in this process as well. Tell us something about yourself that's going to make you stand out. Show us what that looks like on your application, and then when you get to the interview, elaborate on that and expound on it even more. So I would just point that out. In doing your homework, the final thing I'll say, I guess, is that you should definitely know the difference between appellate courts and trial courts. Trial court judges are looking for something very different oftentimes than appellate court judges. For appellate court judges, they spend all their time reading what we did here in the trial court and then writing about it. So your writing skills are very important. And they're important at the trial court as well, but what's more important, at least to me at the trial court level, is I need help making a decision. So I'm looking for people who can help me analyze the law, interpret the law, and get to the right decision. I care less about how well you can articulate that decision in writing. I'm more interested in your analytical skills. So the trial court skills and the appellate court skill sets are a little bit different in that I say the appellate court folks want to emphasize your writing skills. At trial court, I'm more interested in your analytical skills. Not that that's not important at both levels, but it's just a difference in how we sort of do our work. I'm looking for the answer. They're looking for whether or not I got the answer right or not.
Thanks so much, Judge Livingston. I think I've gotten a bevy of questions, which is wonderful, but I think you've already answered the first question, which is it too late for graduating students to apply for clerkships? By saying that they should call the court and find out if there's openings. There are some judges that haven't found their clerks yet, and there are also some that take a different opportunity and a random clerkship opportunity opens up. So that was really great advice. As we move into standing out in the application stacks, I'd like you to specifically focus on the importance of keeping LinkedIn on your resume, some strategies in your cover letter, and whether or not you've had any unique experiences within those cover letters. Those are some of the questions that we've gotten so far. So Judge Livingston, can you kick us off?
I will tell you about a very recent unique experience that I had, and it was a bad example. So here's what not to do. We received an email from a student at a very prestigious Ivy League law school. The resume looked pretty good. He put in his cover letter, I guess I would call it a typical cover letter, but he emailed it to us. We wrote him back and basically said, you know, we're not really looking at this time. He emailed us again and basically said, are you sure? You know, that's the last guy I'm going to hire, right? Because he's not listening. And so if he's not listening to me in the application process, he's probably not going to listen to the instructions that I give him. So yeah, I was pretty sure when I said I don't have any openings right now. So I would say listen. I would say don't be a pest. I would say follow direction. I mean, so that's what not to do. In terms of how to get my attention in your application process, a couple of things. I can tell if somebody knows something about my court. I can tell who prepared. I can tell who did their homework. When I see things that say, you know, I'm really excited about X, Y, or Z, and my court has nothing to do with X, Y, or Z, you know, that's a problem. So if they write me and say, you know, I've always wanted to work in criminal law, then I know they don't know that I don't hear criminal cases. So that doesn't work for me. If you've done your homework and you know what kind of court I run and what kind of cases I hear, and you tell me that you're interested in that, that's going to stand out. That's going to make me want to dig further and inquire more about whether or not you're the right fit for my staff. So those are a couple of sort of easy things. The other thing I would say about doing your homework, if you know that the judge went to your law school, you might mention something or make sure that that's real obvious. If you are a member of a sorority or a fraternity and you know that the judge is a member of that sorority or fraternity, you want to make sure that that's probably not in your cover letter, but maybe somewhere in the bottom of your resume under extracurricular stuff, you might want to mention that you're a member of that fraternity or sorority, because that is going to get the judge's attention. If you don't have the best grades, but you have, you know, some sort of a compelling story or some explanation about what was going on in your life that might help explain, you know, why your grades aren't the best, you either want to hint to that so that I'm intrigued enough to want to interview you and find out more, or tell me right up front what the story is that might explain that. So if your grades are a little low, for example, in your first year, but you worked full time because you already had a family, you might want to say, you know, I'm a parent and a law student, and you know, I'm taking 20 hours and I'm also working full time, or something that's going to provide at least some justification. Because if you're not working and you don't have a family and you have no excuse for bad grades, I'm not impressed. But if your grades are, you know, not the best but not the worst, and you have some explanation, I want to know what that is.
Thanks so much, Judge Livingston. Judge Konduros, if you could add anything that you might have, but specifically address the question that we got on whether or not a LinkedIn profile on a resume is appropriate.
Well, in the first part, I think, was almost all of our clerks in South Carolina on the state court bench, whether it's circuit court, which is our highest trial level court, and Judge Childs was a circuit court judge before she went to the federal bench. We want everybody to start prior to our August conference. We have a conference that's either the first or second week in August, and it's mandatory for staff attorneys and clerks. And so pretty much everybody starts their clerk in time to come to that conference. There's a lot of training that goes on there for them, and so August tends to be, and a lot of them start, they've taken the bar, and they obviously haven't, they won't hear back in South Carolina until October. But we go August to August pretty much. And I try to rotate my clerks so that I have two, only one leaves, and then two, I've got them staggered. I will tell you, my clerk that would have left this August is staying another year, so right now I don't have an opening. But back to the application process, I agree with Judge Livingston. Stand out. Appellate court, we hear appeals from any trial court in the state. So I hear probate, workers' comp, criminal, civil, family law, you name it. If it was tried, our administrative law court, if it was tried and somebody's unhappy, we see it. It's so your letter, first of all, we're also easily accessible on Google or whatever, that you can read decisions that have my name on it. And if something interests you, point it out. Sucking up works in every category in the universe. Know something about me, know something about one of my cases. All of our resumes are online. If you love the New York Yankees like I do, put it down. That stuff does matter because we work so closely with our clerks. I want to like you. You could be the smartest person in the world and the best writer I've ever seen, but if you're just too much of an egghead to be around all day, it's going to be hard for all of us. And also, we do about 78% criminal, and people that are involved in criminal cases are pitiful and sad, and I need you to have some sort of knowledge of the world about what the situation is like in the drug culture, or what it's like in the white slave trade culture, or whatever. So if you've been in the Peace Corps, or you have volunteered in a soup kitchen or something, I would like to know that, because it helps with your understanding of the sad strain of humanity that we're going to try to administer justice to every day. Stand out. Don't be cavalier and don't be flippant, but do stand out. And I agree with Judge Livingston about the emailing. I respond to every application we get. It may just be a form letter, but I tell you that we got it and we considered it, and if you sent me a particularly nice packet, I actually return it on my own dime so that you can use it to send to somebody else. But you will hear from us, and I can't tell you, I agree, the emails I've gotten from people that's not so much saying, I can't believe you're not going to hire me, but they've just gotten where they email every Friday, and instead of looking eager, it sounds like you don't think I'm going to respond. And that's unfortunately how I have to take it. So that would be my tips in this particular portion, which is the application stack. That's how you.
Oh, sorry. Josephine, can I add just a couple things? You asked about LinkedIn and sort of technology. I don't know that I don't know that I have an opinion about how I feel about LinkedIn profiles or not. I don't know that it matters so much. But I will say this. We also Google you. So I just thought of another recent example. I was hiring a permanent staff position, a staff attorney position last year. And in the course of the applications, I got some recommendations from other judges about lawyers that they knew who might be a good fit. And so I didn't know these people, and I started Googling them. One of them had written a very detailed I guess articles, some legal articles in some legal journals, and also had some karate or martial arts things that were published and YouTube videos. And I mean, I found out a lot of information about this particular applicant. In one of the things that I learned, the person had made some comments about the death penalty that caused me concern. And so while on paper the resume was pretty fantastic, and all of these sort of extracurricular activities looked intriguing and interesting and fun, but when I got to digging into the things that the person had said and had written about an issue like the death penalty, an issue of substance, the views were very extreme, and they alone disqualified that applicant. So I guess I would say about your entire footprint in cyberspace, clean it up, and remember that the judge's staff is going to Google you. They're going to look at, if you're on LinkedIn, they'll probably look at your profile if you let them see it. So make sure what they see about you is something you want them to know about you. If you're at a bachelor party getting drunk, you want to remove that if you can from your cyber footprint. So we Google you as much as you Google us, and I guess that's the tip I want to offer.
Fantastic. Thank you both for your comments on that. I'd like to now move into some interview pitfalls that you may have seen while you are past the application process and on to the interviews. Judge Konduros, if you could start.
My clerks, past and present, review all the resumes, and each of them, they rank whatever stack we're looking at, and they pick their top 2, sometimes their top 3, and I have 3 clerks. So that could be 6 to 9 people, and they would actually interview them before I even know who they are. They meet with them as a group. All 3 of them meet with everybody. They set up a couple of days, and they do that. We've done it on FaceTime. We've Skyped it as necessary. I remember one guy who decided to meet with my clerks on Skype at the busiest Starbucks in Washington, D.C. you have ever seen. We couldn't hear him. He couldn't hear us. I don't know why that was his decision of where he was going to go. Possibly he didn't have wireless, and that was the routine. But, I mean, he just was shouting at us, and we were shouting at him. And it was clearly his choice. I mean, he could have sat in his car, and it would have been better. But the clerks meet with them first. I don't see them at all. Then they rank the 6. And I might see the whole 6, or I might see the 3, but each of them votes. And then we have a writing sample that they would do prior to them actually meeting with the clerks. And it changes, and we send it to you, and you have 3 days to send in a mocked-up opinion or bench memo based on the writing sample. We kind of shake it up because we know people share. And then I meet with them one-on-one thereafter for really pure compatibility, because at that point, if my senior clerks say they can do the work, I believe them, and then I meet with them as much for compatibility issues at that point. I'm really good about sharing. If it gets down to 2 and I really have trouble making my decision, I usually try to find the other applicant a job with either our staff attorney, which is 17 staff attorneys, and they rotate out half every year, or other judges that I know that it might be a nice fit on the compatibility scale. You know, dress professionally. I will tell you, I'm kind of a large woman, but when you shop now at the mall-type stores, the jackets are too short, the skirts are too short, the shoes are too high. For the women, the men have less of a hard time with that, but I like to see shine shoes, and I like to see a well-knotted tie. I mean, you have to, if you're applying for one of the highest courts in our state, I need you to look nice. And because you're going to dress professionally every day. We don't have casual Fridays or anything like that. You're going to wear a coat and tie. I don't care if it's the same one every day, as long as you're clean. But don't show up for your interview thinking that right after this you can go clubbing. And we do see that. It always kind of surprises me. There's a big difference between poverty and trying to make a splash. I don't care if you're poor, but don't make that kind of a splash. And it does surprise me. I recently judged a national mock trial competition that we had here, and I will tell you, I was a little concerned about the girls' clothes. The sweaters were too low cut and the skirts were too short, and I know from walking around the mall that's what's available, but do a little better than that. I mean, I had a girl the other day that was so sharp, but the whole time she sat in that chair and talked to me, I could see her underwear. And I was just kind of surprised that that's what she had on. I know that sounds like an old woman talking, but it does matter. You're going to work closely with female judges and male judges. It doesn't matter. You need to dress professionally, and that's one of my pet peeves. And there's too many applicants to choose from that do dress well. Don't put yourself behind the 8 ball with that. The interview process, I know you're nervous. I understand that. We've read up on you. We've seen your writing sample. You're not going to lose it by being nervous. But if you've chosen to practice law, I would have someone you know sit down and ask you questions, another law student, some member of your family. You may ask a stranger, a dean at the law school or something, to interview you in the office so that you can kind of formulate your answers. You should prepare for this like you prepare for any type of exam. It's a well-paid job. It's a great resume item for the rest of your life. Don't just walk in cold. Have some things, memorize a few things, have a good opening and a good closing. You know, I've been a judge a long time. We like to hear a good presentation. So there's a lot of work before you get to the interview. Don't run over. You know, we schedule stuff all the time. If you can't come today, I can give you another day. I know you're in class. I know you live out of town. We will work with you, but it's better to put it off and be ready than to come in and just kind of flub through it. And I really stress all those details because you actually represent the court, not just me, and it's not just the written work. You're going to go to conferences with me. You're going to make an appearance at seminars and stuff. I need to know that you look like someone that I'm proud of. Ooh, that sounded harsh.
True.
Judge Livingston, do you have anything to add?
A couple of things I would add, and again, I would agree with what the judge has said. I think the first thing I want to say is I want you to show me your personality in the interview. I want to know who you are, what you're about, what kind of person you are. If you got an interview, you have already made the first cut, meaning that I found something about your resume and your writing sample and your we look at the writing sample you provide. We don't give you a writing assignment. So I've already looked at all of the information that you have provided me, and something about what you sent to me caught my attention. So if you get an interview at all, you've made the first cut. Once you've made the first cut, now I want to know something that I can't find out on paper. So I want to know who you are, what you're about, what your interests are, why you want to do this, and how you can be helpful to me, because ultimately, if I have to do my job and your job, you're unnecessary, right? So I want somebody that's going to supplement me, that's going to add some value to what I have to get done and get accomplished in my work. And in order for me to make the best hiring decision, I need to know who I'm working with. So show me your personality. That's the first thing. I would also say that you should anticipate the questions and you should be honest in your answers. Just like we require lawyers to tell us the good and bad precedents, the ones that support their position as well as the points of authority that don't support their positions, I expect you to be able to explain something about your resume that maybe is not as great. We talked about that a little bit earlier. But tell me who you are, be honest about who you are, and show me your personality. Final thing I'll say about this is I have tried very hard to make my interviews more interesting. And so I might ask, the well-anticipated question, so tell me why you want to be my clerk, but I'm more likely to ask a question like this. It'll go something like, tell me about a time when you learned about something that was unethical and what you did about it. Tell me about a time when you had to face sort of a dilemma and you felt like Solomon, and what was it, and how did you resolve it? I'm going to ask you a more, I hope, creative question that's going to require you to think about a real experience, something that really happened in your life, and I want to know what it was, what you did about it, and that's going to tell me what I need to know about you more so than your canned answer about, why you want to be here. So I guess my tip to you is to be thinking about the things that have happened in your life and in your educational experiences that make you stand out, that make you the best qualified candidate for this position, and be prepared to talk about that, not so much in the canned way. You should be prepared in that way also. But if I ask you one of these, tell me about a time when questions, you are ready with an example and you are ready with an answer that makes you look good.
You're a tough interviewer.
Thanks so much, Judge Livingston. There's just a couple of questions I want to clear in the queue before we move on. Judge Konduros, if you could answer this question. One of our viewers just said, I am baffled by, do you have any questions, final portion of the interview. I'm very nervous at the end and I feel like I blow the question every single time. How can I prepare for this?
And the person she was baffled by, I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear you.
When at the end of an interview, an interviewer normally says, do you have any questions of me?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that awful? I mean, that's just awful. That's like, when the first question is when do you finish law school, and then they want to know when do you pass the bar, and when you're getting engaged, and when you're getting married, when you're having children. I mean, those questions are just horrible. But, yeah, any questions at the end, sometimes they just, if I haven't brought up the salary or the start date or the working conditions, I had one girl asked me something the other day that I thought was great. She said, could I possibly see what would be my office? And I thought that was great. We walked over and looked at it, and she turned with a beatific smile and said, I wanted to envision myself here. and think that way about it while you're going through your final decision. I thought that was great, you know, and she like stood there and tried to give it good karma, which I thought was good. I think sometimes that last question would be about me. Like I said, sucking up always works. And she said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I thought that was interesting and made me talk about that. And she actually looked interested the whole time. I think sometimes the last question is realistic. And I want you to know this because we know, for me, my clerks are not permanent. They come in 2 and 3 year spurts. And they want to know how it's going to be if they get married or if they have a baby or you know, if they move, if they can't live in Columbia. They'll actually ask something that's concerning. And if you're a good enough applicant, I mean, the world is small. You know, South Carolina is what, the 5th or 6th smallest state. We can make it work. I've got one clerk that comes in at 7:30 in the morning because she has a child and she drops him at school and comes and she stays till 3:30. I have one that can't get up that comes at 10 but she stays till 6:30, and then I have one that works regular hours. If you're good at your job, I know you're working on it whether I actually see you or not. We can make accommodations. But that last question, if you're too nervous to ask something about yourself, have an answer to ask me or ask the other clerks. But I'll tell you, like Judge Livingston said, if I actually meet you, you've met all the criteria except possibly compatibility. At that time, I want to know if you're fun. You know, we're going to talk 40 hours a week. I've got to like you. And I know you'll blossom once you're used to the job. I really do. But I thought that was a good question when she said, could I see what would be my office? That was a good one. I give you that one.
Thanks. Judge Livingston, can you talk a little bit about whether or not you think more than one recommendation letter, if it's not required, if you should submit more than one?
You know, I don't think I'm as concerned about the number of them. I'm concerned about what they have to say. So if you have 2 people that are going to say exactly the same thing about you and their experience with you is the same, I don't want that. That's just repetitious. But if you're going to give me 2 or even 3 and they're from different people in your life who've had an opportunity to see you in different environments and have something meaningful to say about your skill sets, then I'm interested. What I'm not interested in, however many I receive, you know, is, you know, I've known them for 10 years because we go to the same church and, you know, they're really devout. What I'm interested in is we work together on a committee and they took charge of the committee and they did their assignments, you know, timely, and they were creative in making suggestions about how to solve a problem, or their writing skills are really top-notch, or they're, you know, really creative thinkers or whatever. So it's the quality of what they have to say. I think probably 4 or 5 is too many, but 2 or 3 don't really bother me as long as they're different and they have something meaningful to say about your skill set, not just, boy, they're a really nice person and, you know, all that. Everybody's a nice person to somebody. You're not going to send me a resume of somebody that doesn't like you. But I'm looking for, and I try to write, when I write a recommendation for somebody I've worked with, and I only write them for people that I know well and have worked with, I try to look at skill sets, and I try to say, you know, they did this well or they did that well, and not just these general, oh, you know, you'd be so lucky to have them because they're fabulous. You know, I'm looking for content and substance, not fluff.
I'm going to join in that. I'd rather have a wonderful letter from the head of the Humane Society that said that you clean cages well than have one from the lieutenant governor who says you're from a lovely family and that he's admired them for many years. It's not going to matter how high-ranking your letter is, like Judge Livingston said, if they don't know you. I'd rather know something about your diligence. I like law school professor letters, I really do, if they actually talk about you and your work ethic and such. But yeah, I agree. It should be someone who actually knows you, and don't worry too much if you can't get a 2-star general to write you a letter. That's not what I'm looking for.
Judge Livingston, can you talk a little bit about the prestige of school, or whether or not you care if a student goes to a school that maybe has been founded in the last 20 or 30 years, and whether or not you have a specific GPA cutoff?
If you tell me in your application that you went to brand new law school because brand new law school's idea about legal education fascinates and and interest you because they're emphasizing clinical work or because they have a focus on X kind of practice or whatever, then that's going to be more impressive to me. If you went to brand new law school and you don't do well at brand new law school and you didn't really give it your best effort, it doesn't matter what the school is, I'm not going to be impressed by that. So I'm less, I guess I'm just not that impressed by the two-star general or the Ivy League necessarily. I'm impressed by your grades. I'm impressed by what people have to say about you. I'm impressed about, you know, the way you present your information and your skill set. So if you can write really well, that's going to matter to me. It doesn't matter to me that you wrote your first legal research and writing memo at Harvard or if you wrote it at, you know, brand new law school down the street. The other thing I'll say about that, I'll just disclose a tiny little bias on my part. All the people at Harvard are going to get jobs, right? Everybody that goes to Harvard is going to get a job. I don't need to worry about those people. It's the people who don't go to Harvard who need an opportunity. So I'm probably, if I'm going to discriminate, it's probably going to be against the people who I know are going to get jobs. I'm less impressed because I know they're going to be fine and they're going to be on Wall Street someplace. I'm looking for somebody who wants to work in a trial court, who wants to roll up their sleeves and come to work with me every day and help me make the very tough decisions that I have to make on a daily basis. That's what I'm looking for. And I don't care what law school they go to as long as they work hard, they can write well, can analyze well, can articulate their positions and help me do my job. Doesn't matter to me whether it was Ivy League or no league or whether it was old or new. It matters to me that I have a student in front of me who wants to help me get the work done because that's what it's about at trial courts.
Thanks so much. I'm going to ask one more follow-up question, but some of the questions have been why Judge Childs hasn't been speaking. Judge Childs is a federal district court judge, and this is about state and appellate court judges. You will be hearing from her. She is not mute on purpose. There is logic, I promise. But Judge Konduros, I'm going to ask you just one more question, then we're going to move on to the actual clerkship process. And this one has to do with lateral attorneys that may not have been in litigation before that are thinking about clerkships, and also for people that might not necessarily have a tie to a state that they're applying in. Do you think what are ways that those things can be explained? Is that something for a cover letter, or where do you think things like that should be explained?
Okay, I will say in South Carolina, you have to take the South Carolina bar the next time it's offered if you work for a state court judge. So if you come to work for me, even on a one-year clerkship, you're going to be expected to take the South Carolina bar, even if you're a member of another state bar. So was that kind of what you were asking about that? I really don't care where you're from. I tend to like to hire people right out of school because I think this is a great chance to get a good resume item to go on. And, you know, frankly, it just doesn't pay that much. And you want them to stay as long as they have agreed to stay. It's not by contract, but if I want you for 2 years, I want you for 2 years. Now, if you got your dream job, you know, a year into it, we talk about it. But I want to pop on one thing Judge Livingston said. I have a thing about student loans. I want you to, it's too late for most of the people on this thing, but I like people to go to the best school they can afford. I hate when you graduate from college and law school that you basically owe a very nice house in student loans. So again, I'm not prejudiced. I was trying to think if I knew which law school all three of my current clerks went to, and I can't think of where one of them went. So that tells you how little it matters to me. I'd rather you be the top of your class at ABC Law School than to be the bottom of your class at a top 10 law school university. We're going to talk to you, and we're going to see your writing sample, and we're going to talk to your professors that have written you letters. So we're able to ferret that out. I just feel so bad. I hate to tell you, when I went to law school, it was $500 a semester. And at the time, we thought it was, I was working as a waitress and making $300 a week. And law school was $500, just to put it in perspective. And I just feel so bad about what y'all are paying now in school fees. So yeah, I'm not worried about which school you went to, as long as it's ABA accredited.
Fantastic. I'm actually going to combine, in the essence of time, the next two sections. So Judge Livingston, if you could start talking about what a successful clerkship is and how we should be preparing for clerkships.
Well, the successful clerkship, in my opinion, is one in which someone helps me do my job. So at the trial court level, and this is very different from appellate courts, but at the trial court level, we're making decisions very quickly. We joke at judicial trainings about how the trial court judges have to rule on objections, in real time, right now, when the objection is made, whereas our colleagues on the appellate courts can think for a month about whether or not the objection should have been overruled or sustained. We don't have that luxury at the trial court, so for me, a successful clerk is one who shows up, who rolls up their sleeves, who helps me make decisions right now, because that's what I have to do, and so that's what makes it successful for me. I want you to leave your personal problems at home, because I'm not your counselor. I'm your employer for that brief time or long time that you're with me, and so I might be sympathetic to something you have going on, but I don't really want to get involved in whatever that might be. So for me, a successful person is just like every other employee that works here at the courthouse. I want you focused, I want you present, I want you productive, and I want you to help me do my job, and if we can do those things, we'll be a successful partnership.
It's true. I don't want to, I'm not going to follow you around. We don't clock in and clock out, but when I call, I expect you to be there. Just to add to what Judge Livingston said, I want you to argue with me about the case. I want you to formulate an opinion. I want you to be able to back it up. I can't tell you how many times all three of them have ganged up on me where they don't like my decision and why. At the end of the day, I'm going to have to sign it, and they understand. So like they say in the Army, sometimes you just have to salute smartly and charge up the hill. I want a clerk that I can say, write it to affirm or write it to reverse, and have that fluidity of talent to be able to do it whichever way to the best of their ability, even if they don't agree with what is going to be my decision. And I think that that takes a little while, but usually not that long, for people to stand up for themselves and their beliefs about a case. But I'm looking for the give and take. And with great regularity, I will be the final decision maker on so many cases. And so we have to give it our full thought. My clerks talk to each other every day and go over cases when they're stumped. They help each other. We have deadlines that are set on the calendar. I don't check with anybody. I know the end of the day today, my bench memos for May are going to be posted on our intranet. I don't have to ask if they were posted. They're going to be. You're a young lawyer at that point. You've been sworn in as a member of the bar, and I expect you to act like one.
Judge Childs, I think now would be a great time for you to hop in.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Well, I think now is a good time to hop in and add anything that Judge Konduros or Judge Livingston.
Okay, and again, thank you all for this opportunity. You didn't hear me speak because we had a separate program on demystifying the federal judge clerkship process, and I recommend that for those who were not able to see that one, to go to the same website, and that has been made available to you in a podcast. I agree with all that has been said here. I recruited these judges. As you can see, they are absolutely fabulous, and they are the real deal. They would give you the correct information, and I wanted them to just really relay everything possibly you could be thinking about. Just a couple of tidbits that I would add on the federal clerk process. We are a little different. We do have the system of Oscar available to us, so most federal judges do participate in that process. I didn't for a few years. I just did this past year, got over 200 resumes and applications in that regard. And so we're going through those at this time. The beauty of Oscar is that the judge is the one who elects to post, and so therefore you'll have a deadline to submit those applications, and I, again, suggest you abide by the application. On the Oscar process, we can see everything, which means you'll have your application there, your resume, your cover letter, and it's no different in terms of the types of things that you would want to include in there in that regard. The judge, myself as well, will acknowledge all applications either by letting you know that you can select it for an interview, or application process is closed, or that, again, we'll have that interview. Just a couple of things in terms of the preferences. I agree with them with respect to class rankings, GPA, things of that nature. We're looking for that combination of the person, both on quality and your merit, but also just ability to get along. You really have to have a person that you can work with day in and day out, feel like they've got your back, that they are interested, that when we hit the send button in federal court for our orders to go out electronically, that you're with us, that you've made sure that that order is near perfect with respect to the writing, the editing, things of that nature. Law review, moot court, of course, those types of things do help. Law review from the standpoint of your ability to pay attention to detail. When a judge writes an order, we understand that everyone is looking for us to assist with your organizational structure and how you write. So we have to be the ones who are correct in how we publish and edit our decisions. With respect to moot court, it does help with writing and your oral advocacy. Your judge is often going to ask you to articulate your position with respect to how we should rule. And we will have that conversation jointly, so you need not be shy. Your judge needs for you to articulate that position. Previous experience is great. We manage huge disputes. Every day I enjoy going to work with such passion because it's new, it's stimulating, it's very intellectually stimulating on a daily basis. Right now I'm working on a $200 million case. I'm wrapping up a Ponzi scheme. I'm getting ready to deal with a motion for new trial on a drug trafficking case that I tried twice because there was a holdout in the first trial, and then each trial lasting close to 3 weeks. And then you'll have your regular synopsis of guilty pleas, other types of motions, you know, just literally different things every day. So you need somebody with different backgrounds and just different interests in terms of assisting you with those cases. And then with respect to federal court, I would just add that because we're essentially national courts and we have diversity jurisdiction, we have federal laws, treaties, issues, statutes that we abide by, we don't require a particular bar, but you do have to take a bar. So don't let that hinder you if you're going to a state and you have not taken that state's bar. As long as your judge is willing to accept to allow you to come to that particular state, then you're fine in that regard. But again, I do recommend you to go to that particular webinar on the Demystifying the Federal Judicial Clerkship process. I wanted to now speak to you about a couple of opportunities within the American Bar Association to assist you with your clerkship programs. And I would ask that they advance those slides at this time. First, we have the ABA Judicial Clerkship Program. And this is a joint effort by the ABA Council for Racial and Ethnic Diversity and Educational Pipeline and the ABA Judicial Division. What's exciting about this program, and you need to get your law schools involved, is that at the mid-year meeting, wherever the ABA is, law schools tend to send certain students there. We then have the opportunity for both state and federal judges to assist you with your clerkship process. Over that course of 3 days, you are in sessions that will deal with your writing of opinions. You'll have panel discussions on various topics. There will be informal social events, and then of course there is an interview and application process. Real judges, both state and federal, will assist you with all of these issues. And I'm happy to announce that many people get clerkships out of those opportunities because that judge has had the opportunity to be with you one-on-one. So please do take advantage of those in that regard. The other program is through the American Bar Association as well, and it is through the ABA section of litigation, which is the Judicial Intern Opportunity Program, and that website is indicated there as well. This program began in the year 2000. It is hosted from participating judges in various cities and around the nation. It's not in every city, so always check the ABA website to figure out if it's in your city or a city near you, because it is co-sponsored by law firms, state bar associations, as well as the judges in their participating courts. So you have to have the money to go to the program because a stipend is offered to you in that regard. I just checked today, and the 2016 summer program, those applications are now closed. But of course, you still have opportunities for the 2017 program, so I do encourage you to apply. And that site also lists frequently asked questions and answers. So if you have further things that you'd like to discuss there or hear about, please do go there. And then the final opportunity that I invite you to is just the beginning. It's a pipeline organization of Summer Judicial Internship Diversity Project, and it basically places highly qualified students from underrepresented and economically disadvantaged communities into chambers of federal judges. So we have a screening committee where over 200 or so people will apply. That screening committee then vets those applications and sends it out to the federal judges who have indicated an interest in the program. Those judges then interview those people and decide who they will select for a summer internship. Now, this one, unfortunately, does not offer a stipend in all courts, but I will say in South Carolina, we have found a way through our court to offer stipends to at least 10 every summer. So that would be a court you would want to consider applying to as well. But it is a wonderful opportunity to work with federal judges under any circumstances, and even state and federal, I would advise you all to apply for summer internships if you can afford for it to not be paid, because the experience is invaluable, and then you could also use the opportunity to present that on your resume and potentially work with another judge at a later point in time. But thank you for that opportunity, and thank you, judges, as well, for the program.
Thanks, Judge Child. It's a great point. I'm actually a Just the Beginning Foundation scholar, and I did that after my first summer in Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm clerking in Federal District Court in Pennsylvania after law school. So it does work out, so you should take advantage of those opportunities. Unfortunately, it looks like we have run out of time, so I do want to thank our faculty for this program, Judge Konduros, Judge Livingston, and Judge Childs. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with all of us. This has been the best program that I think we have put on so far, so I really want to say thank you. On behalf of the ABA, I'm Josephine Bond, and thanking all of you right now for joining us. As a quick reminder, ABA membership is now free for all law students. So you don't have to worry about dues. All law students can access the ABA's resources, build their networks, and develop professionally, all for free. Just visit www.abaforlawstudents.com for more information. Finally, before you leave, if you could just wait for the evaluation to come up on your screen. Thank you so much for attending our program, and it will be posted online along with the slides afterwards. Thanks.